we can keep redynameshing and redynameshing, okay? So if I want to start keeping a little bit more of the detail quality, okay, of this, that's where this resolution slider comes into play. But be mindful of this. Don't just go, oh, yes, I have power of the force. Don't do it, okay? You shouldn't be, you know, if you take a look, if we look at even something like, we're going to put that back down just in case I remesh it. If we go back to this guy, okay, it pretty much, like if you gave this to another student or another class, they say, oh, it totally looks like a human face, right? Totally looks like a male, right? Look at the polygon count. It's only 57,000 polygons, okay? So even if I walk down to under 4,000, it still looks like a human, okay? And it's, I can see the form, the shape, and the silhouette. And what I like to do is actually switch to the flat material. And I actually can take a look at my silhouette at all angles. Okay, so it's a quick way to do this. So I'll even sculpt in this material. All right. So my point is, you don't need a lot of polygons in order to make something have that silhouette in that form, and that's really the important part of this. And that's what Dynamesh was made for. But if there's times where like, okay, I'm losing too much, it's just a little too much, then you'll want to up this resolution. So I like to go up just a little bit at a time. So I just change it to 64. Okay. Nothing will happen until you sculpt. So I have to sculpt on here because it's looking for a change. And then when I clear it, boom, there you go. So now you can see this is what we have now. That's what we had before. So now and before. Now and before. Okay? So now you can see there's more detail, more polygons. So as I sculpt, I can start putting a little bit more of that shape in there. Right? And then when I remesh, see, it's not really losing as much of it anymore. Right, so in my beginning stages, I literally just start working probably no higher than 64, right? Because I will get pretty much enough to what I want at this level, right? That's more than enough polygons, okay? And then if I want to, I can plop in an eyeball in there, okay? And then now, hey, and then I can move this where I want. So you as an artist have to decide, okay? Right now we've been welding everything together, right? So if I plop that eye in there, right, and I do this, it's now welded. So you see that's welded together? You don't have to do that, okay? So Dynamesh has a mode that you can turn on, or you can use what we call subtools, okay? So Dynamesh has a mode right here, it's called groups, okay? And what it's doing is see how colorful it is? That wasn't just there to be cool. Okay, these are called polygroups. It allows us to quickly select out things and just look at certain portions of the mesh. Okay, so when you're drawing stuff out, okay, they're going to get assigned a polygroup. So let's go backwards here. Okay, so this is all one group, and when I draw this out, see the purple's another one. Okay, if I turn this groups button on and I redynamesh, see they don't weld. So I can still look at just the sphere if I wanted to, or just the head, okay? Because then I could do things like mask off the eyeballs, right? And then switch to my favorite brush and start putting everything in. Right, and now I got the eyeballs there that I'm working around. Okay, so this is one way you can go about doing this. Okay, I tend to, and I think most artists, will use a subtool for, like, say, something like an eyeball. Okay? So what I can tell Zbrush to do is, hey, these are actually two separate pieces of geometry. I want you to make the head one and then stack the eye below it, just like layers in Photoshop. Okay? So in the subtool, you can see here, we got our head. Okay? And then you can name it Amazing Paul. Okay? I can tell it to split those eyes apart from the head. Okay? So this is called subtools. So in the subtool menu, we have a split option right here. And I can say split the similar parts, and then tell it okay, and then boom, there you have eyeballs now. You see I have eyeball here to turn them on and off, and I can go back and forth, back and forth. The reason why this is important for you as an artist is I can now turn on things like transparency, and I can see through And so I can start working on this piece here, start pulling or pushing, or I want to start sculpting this eye up more, right? I'm doing it, okay, in transparency mode. So I actually can continue sculpting like this and working on those eyelids, and then you can see it makes sitting better, right? So you can see this is a workflow that people will do, okay? So you can really start having some fun with this. What you can also do with these insert mesh brushes, and a lot of times I just use a simple shape, like say this sphere, so you can add, right, so it welds, okay? But what I can also do is use the sphere itself to cut out, right? So any shape, it doesn't matter what it is. If I hold the Alt key when I'm drawing out this, I can actually cut in to the surface. I'm just using an insert mesh brush, so it's any insert mesh brush. So I'm just grabbing a sphere. So like you could grab a cylinder, right? And then if you hold down the Alt key as you're dragging, see it's inverted, it's flipped. That's an indicator to you that it's a negative. And if we turn on the grouping, you see it's white. That's the other indicator. And then if you clear it and do that, then there you go. Okay, so you're just using shapes now to cut in really quickly if you wanted to. Okay, so that's what some of the things that insert mesh brushing with Dynamesh is going to allow you guys to do, right? And then if I want to start putting a mouth on this, I can start using one of my favorite brushes, which is the Dame Standard, and then I can hold the Alt key and do the opposite, right? And then start pulling this out, right? You can see how quickly I can start building things. Okay, so for just regular sculpting, okay, all I'm doing is just touching the mesh with my tablet. It's pressure sensitive, okay? And then that'll give us the clay, and if I'm holding the Alt key, it's digging in. So the Alt key is going to be becoming a theme of opposite, okay? So whenever you hold that Alt key, it's going to be doing the opposite of what the original one was doing, okay? So this is all fun, but then we started taking this another level. We started then saying, all right, we've got these insert things that we can use with Dynamesh. How about putting them along a curve? And I want horns. Okay, so if I want to put horns on this guy, I can say, hey, I want the horn to do that. Okay, and then this is along a curve, so I can move this where I want, move it around at any point. Okay, and you can see it can even come away. And then you do this. Make sure your eyes are wide open too, so it's like freaky. Okay, so this is just moving the surface, the mesh, along a curve. Okay, it's what? Better than Maya? That's right. Thank you for noticing. Yeah, well, there's some great tools in both, I think, but this is just the iceberg. Wait, we're going to get into some cool stuff here. So, say I want to make horns, right? Obviously, horns taper, most cases. So, I can tell it to adjust the size, and I can use this, and when I tap, see it's tapering, and I can even say, no, I want it to go the other way, so I'm going to flip horizontal, and then boom, there you go, now it's tapering. Okay? I don't want it to do this thing, okay? I want this to stay kind of stationary and that kind of stationary when I start moving this curve, so you can see I can keep adjusting the curve. And see how this is kind of starting to move away from the head, right? Because it's got to update. So I can also lock this, so I'm locking the start and the end. And right now I'm in stroke, okay? And it's curve mode, because curve mode's on by default for this brush. So the thing you got to think about what the heck is stroke? Think about if I was a painter and I'm painting with oil paint, I got a blank canvas, right? You're not going to just use one brush to paint. You're going to have a fan brush, you're going to have big brushes, little brushes. So the stroke is kind of that. How are you applying your paint in the canvas? That's kind of what stroke is. How are you applying that sculpting clay, or in this case, a tube? How's it being applied? And what I'm doing is, hey, I'm applying it along a curve. So draw a curve first, then put the mesh. Okay? And now I want to start editing with that, so we have features. So like lock start and lock end will allow me to start doing things like that. And you see now it's not pulling away from the head. Now, so maybe I want the horns to do this, and then I'll switch to this view, and maybe they need to start coming up, maybe in this way, like that. Maybe that's how I want the horns to be. Okay? And then the beauty of this is we're Dynamesh, so boom, it welds. If you want it to weld, so see now I can sculpt across this. Okay? Then we can say, well, let's put some wings on him. I don't know why. Okay? On his head. It's my artwork. Stop making fun of me. Okay? So I can do something like this, and then boom, you get a surface. Right? And then I can start playing with this and adjusting this. And of course, again, we have lock start and lock end. Okay? So this brush they are off by default. I can put them on, and I can start manipulating in this and say maybe I want to use this instead to do something. Right? I don't know why, but it's Pan's Labyrinth. Okay, so you have stuff like this happening, right? And you see how thick this is? Okay, the brush size. So see how it's red right now, and you see how I scroll over, it becomes like a blue. Okay, when it becomes this blue or this turquoise, that means you're editing the curve. Okay, so red means draw. You're going to draw. This blue means you can edit the curve. Right? And when I'm in red, I'm in essence redrawing this. Okay? So when I'm blue, I can edit this. Okay? But what I can do also with the red is this controls the thickness. So on the fly, I can keep changing the size of this based upon my draw size. And get as skinny as I want. Okay? So you can do all this on the fly. Okay? So there's a lot of brushes, and I'll show a couple more that do it. So for example, if you're trying to make something, let's just say cloth, which we all want to make cloth. Okay? Actually here, let's not lose my amazing sculpt that I'm doing right now. I'm so proud of it. I'm sending it to my mom. It's going on the fridge. That's right, she still puts my work on the fridge. Fine. That's the Borg ship. Woo! Do you guys know what that is? Sure. Just making sure. Just making sure. Okay, so let's say I want to do something that's cloth. So I just turn this cube and I put Dynamesh mode on. Okay? So these brushes have many different styles. So there's, for example, this curved surface, which let's say like a cape for a superhero. Okay, or maybe this is going to be a table with some cloth on it. This brush is using, see the curve, right? And as I draw, I'm going to change one other thing that I don't like having on for this brush. Okay, so as I start drawing, it just creates the surface for me. And in essence, I'm just creating the cloth how I want it, right? But I'm not going to stop there. I have all these curves now that I can play with, right, and manipulate. So what I can do is, again, turn on that lock start and lock end, because I don't want the top to move away from the box. That bottom I want to stay stationary so that when I'm moving this, I have that. And then I'm also going to turn bend on. Okay, so bend means it can actually bend the curve. So as I come in here and I start doing this, okay, I can start bending the curve. Oops. Bending the curve how I want. And what happens is you'll instantly just start getting natural wrinkles. And that is how easy it is to do cloth. No, it's not that easy. Okay? So I like using, instead of this brush, okay, so talking about a little bit what we're talking about, so you see the geometry? Very planar, right? There's nothing going this way. So if you notice when I start wrinkling it, not so good, doesn't look so well. So we made another brush just for me. Okay, that's called the Curve Snap. And if I touch, it's actually switched to that brush. And then now look at the geometry. So there's more information there for me. So now when I start bending these, right, I'll start doing it. And I snapshotted the version of this. Okay, so you can see the flow is a lot better now. Right? And then now I have something. Was that shocking? Okay, so I can now think about this. This is one brush, right? And I can just simply switch to, say, my clay buildup, and I'm gonna delete these strokes. Okay, and I really like to use this brush to just, okay, this wrinkle is gonna come this way, so I'm blocking in that wrinkle, right? And every wrinkle has some kind of force. There's a tension somewhere that makes a wrinkle. So here, this could be a tension corner, right? So then the wrinkle might be coming off through here, right? In this area. Now, when you start dealing with something like cloth, okay, so if I just look at this piece, right, and this brush in particular, if I start really pushing hard, okay, you got to be careful about the back end, okay, because if this is skinny enough, all right, like let's say here, there's a tool here, like this, okay, so you see this plane, see how skinny it is, which cloth tends to be skinny, and I start sculpting, okay, see how the back end's not being affected, okay, the reason it's not being affected is because I can turn on this button right here. It's called backface mask. By default, it's off. I've set it on my brush to be on by default. So if I turn this off and we start sculpting, see, it starts pulling on the back surface because the surface is so thin. In fact, if we probably went back to this, it probably now will start even, see, pull on both sides. Okay, I don't want it to pull on both sides. Okay, so I only want it to pull on one side. All right, so that's what this in the brush, because we're dealing with the brush. Okay, auto masking, and then back face. I'm turning my back faces on. And in essence, you're telling ZBrush to ignore the back face. Okay, so now I have a nice brush to really start throwing in some cloth, start smoothing it out, right? I like to use the Damien standard brush to accent the wrinkle. Right, hold the Alt key. I can really start putting in that tension. And notice I'm staying pretty low with my geometry. I'm not adding subdivision levels, which is huge for ZBrush to be able to have subdivision levels. I'm just blocking in where the wrinkles are going to go right now. Okay? So you can see how quickly, just with a couple brushes, I can start making something look a little more like cloth. Right? And then I can switch to the move brush and maybe pull this down a little bit so there's some more gravity involved there. Right? I want to start having that to have a little bit more of a flow like that. Okay? You guys could even do something like if I switch to this brush again, the clay buildup, see how that just sculpts out? It's just pushing out. Well, we have this cool thing called gravity in real life. Okay? I love it. It keeps me stable. So we have gravity in ZBrush too. So in the brush section, because we're affecting the brush, okay, under the depth, there's a gravity slider right here. So I can turn on gravity, and so when I start sculpting, see it automatically is pulling down on the surface. Okay, and I'm controlling the direction of my gravity with this little pencil icon right here so that I can turn. So I can actually make it go up, right? And as I see it starts sculpting up only, or I can change it to only go to the right. And then as I'm sculpting, see it's only going to the right. Okay? So when I'm doing cloth, sometimes I will throw this on just a little bit, give it a little bit of gravity. So I know that's automatically kind of starting to create the downward flow. Okay? And then what's happening, we're stretching our polygons. So what can we do? We can Dynamesh everything. And then there you go, and then keep working, right? And say, okay, that it needs to get skinnier on the top, right? So coming in like this, and then Dynamesh, and then smooth it out maybe, and then there you go. You start getting that fold, right? And then you can see this major fold is causing a secondary fold right here. So this should be pinched a little bit more through here, right? So get a little more pinching. And then say, okay, I want this to really be accented. And then Dynamesh, and then kick it back with some smooth. And then let's really accent that line more. Right? And then there you go. Right? So you see it's just a little process. Okay? It's just like anything that you're sculpting. So then I start getting this. And there should be reasons why there's a wrinkle here. Right? This major wrinkle is being caused maybe because the tension point at the top of it. So that tension, the cloth is bunching up, which causes the wrinkle. And then that wrinkle's so big that it's starting to fold on itself, which then creates a secondary wrinkle. That's really all you have to do for cloth. It's really, for me, it's 3 steps. There's the big major fold, then there's a secondary fold because of that big major fold, and then there'll be little smaller folds. That just, it's like a waterfall. So there might be one more maybe that's just a very light fold through here that's coming from the other folds. Okay? And then now you have something like that. Make sense? Right? So of course, you want to be able to not just also sculpt like this, right? There's going to be times where you're like, well, I don't want to touch this part of the surface. So then you guys can mask stuff off. So as I sculpt, see it doesn't touch. I can't sculpt in here. See? It won't let me sculpt in that surface. Okay? So I can also blur the mask. I can sharpen the mask however I want. So the reason why this becomes important is maybe I want this fold to be really major. I really want it to fall over top of itself. So then maybe I'll mask out that portion that I want to fall over top of it. Okay, so now I'm using the tool to mask. Right? And then I can inverse that, blur it a little bit, so it's going to be a natural pull. Switch to something like the move brush and just start pulling down on it. You say supercalifragilistic. When you make your mask, okay, the control key is making your mask. So if you hold the control key, you guys can see that the masking brush is selected. When I let go, it's the regular brush. When I hold control, it's the masking brush. Okay? So as I mask off, I want to blur it. I have to be holding the control keys. I want to deal with masking, and I just tap on the mask, and it blurs it. Okay? And then the opposite would be sharpening, which what button did I tell you is usually the opposite? Alt. So if you're holding Control and Alt, because you want to be dealing with the masking brush, that makes it sharp. Okay? And all I'm doing is calling the UI, which right here there's a masking section. Again, we're dealing with Paul the tool. Okay? And then there's a masking section you can see right here. Okay? There's a blur mask, sharpen mask. And I'm just using the shortcuts. So you can blur and sharpen, blur and sharpen. Okay? So what this allows us to do, let's do something really cool with this now. Okay? Now, okay, we got the understanding. So holding control masks, so that means control and alt on masks. Right? So just control masking, control and alt on mask. Okay, so I can control this from the draw size, make it a mask like that, and then holding control and alt, make a mask like that. Okay, so I'm just adding and taking away. So what you can do is maybe I want to use a texture to mask. Okay, so we'll start with just this plane. Okay, so I have this plane here, and then I can assign a texture to an object. Okay, so it's got a texture menu. And in fact, let's import, near and dear to my heart, that David's seen for the 5th time, Superman. Okay, so you can see now that texture is being assigned to the mesh itself. Okay, so this is where the wonderful world of UVs come into play. Who loves doing UVs? Nobody does. Do you? You? Oh yeah, I can't stand it. You're hired. So there's going to be a lot of tricks we're going to be able to do with UVs though, and textures in this masking thing. Okay, so I have a plane. All right, I got my Superman logo. I want to give it some surface. So right now we're sitting at 1,000 polygons. So we haven't even gotten into things called subdivisions yet. So what we're able to do is tell ZBrush, hey, you know what? This is not enough to even host a mask, right? So you see how blocky it is? Okay, I want to get a very nice, maybe a small mask, which obviously I can't even do. It's like Plinko or something. Guess the number. Okay, it's not really masking very well when I go to a small size. That's because there's not enough polygons. All I have is that, right? So I need to add more polygons. So what we've done, and we just won an Oscar this year for that. Really? I had to do that just to get a clap? I'm going to remember this. No discount. Oh, stab him where it hurts! So we can divide the mesh, right? This little divide button. I hit divide. It looks like nothing happened, but you can see here now it says level 2. You can divide again. It says level 3. And if I turn the frame on and off, you can see there's more polygons. And so right here, I'm just turning this poly frame, which you can see the shortcut is Shift F. I'm just using the Shift F shortcut. Okay? So it allows you to look at your polygons. Okay? So what I can do is divide. So I can divide again, divide again. Now I'm sitting at 263,000 polygons. And what I'm able to do is walk down those levels, sculpt, walk back up and down. So I can walk down it, and then up it, down it, and up it. And you see the numbers are changing. And what I'm doing is I'm using the shortcuts over here, which is this slider, where it says SDiv. Press the D, walks up. Shift D walks down. Okay, and anytime I want to add a subdivision level, it's Control D. So now I'm sitting at 1,000,000 polygons. Okay, so this will become important more and more. Okay, so I'm going to say, hey, now I have 263,000 polygons. See the mask quality now that I get? So if I walk down, see I'm losing it. I walk up, I'm getting it. We are able to know at level 5, that's what the mask looked like. So we're literally storing that in memory. So you walk down, we stored it. 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 So this doesn't look right. And then so what we do is you walk back up, grab the store, grab the story, grab the story, grabbing the story. Okay? So this allows you to have multi-resolutions of sculpting. Whereas Dynamesh, it was one resolution, which you could just put up, up, up. We can put this up, 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 and then keep coming up and down, up and down, up and down. Right? So why this becomes important is if I come here and let's say I've been sculpting on this guy, and now you need to make some big changes. So here, let's put some great surface texturing on this. Let's do it. Yes, Zitman. Just made a superhero up. Well, I fight Zits. Okay, so when I walk down, see it loses Zitman. When I walk up, he comes back. But maybe I want to make a big change to his nose. Hey, I want his nose bigger. Okay, if I'm doing it here, right, you're dealing with more polygons. So you're stretching a lot, and it's slower. It's a slower process because you got to push around more polygons, right? If I do that same thing, okay, at a lower level, I can see move a lot quicker, right? And I can do what I want with that. And as I walk up, we update everything again. Okay, so this becomes an extremely important workflow. So a lot of artists will start in Dynamesh, block everything in, and they don't do any of this detail until they start adding subdivision levels, which then we create an automatic retopology, which is ZRemesher, which we'll show. Okay, so going back to this, I'm just adding more polygons so I can have a better masking. Because what I want to do is use the texture as the mask. Like, if I was really trying to make this Superman logo, none of us are going to sit here and literally... And that's usually how close I get, too. Super steady hand! Right? You're not going to do that. That's crazy. Okay? So what we want to do is use... How about I'll just grab this straight from the internet. I'm going to say, okay, why don't I just use that as the mask? So notice the logo is pure black. Everything else is pure white. Okay? I can, in the masking, because we're clever, and I can say by color and by the intensity. So what I've done is used the texture to do the mask. Right? So if I start sculpting on this, it doesn't touch the Superman logo. Yeah, you can be a well, this is a PSD. We like JPEG. I usually do PSDs because like JPEG compression is horrible, and then TIFF. There's different types of compressions of TIFFs, and we only accept one type of compression of a TIFF. So it's just a headache. So I just deal with PSDs. I always save on a PSD. Okay, but I want to take this one step further. Because if I was trying to say put a Superman logo on a Superman, and this is all going somewhere because I want to pull up my Superman, Crouch Boy. Okay, that, or I like to call him. Okay, I want to put a Superman logo on his chest. Right? So you guys now know, oh, I could try and sculpting it on there. Okay, not enough polygons. Right? So how about I just walk up in levels? So I'm sitting at 2 million now, so I can start sculpting on it. It's super straight. Okay? Or I can grab, hey, we did that texture thing. I can even assign that to the brush. So I can import that logo to the brush itself. Right? So I can do that. Okay, but still not a fan. I can say, oh, that doesn't look right. I can inverse it. Oh, that looks better. Okay, we're getting there. Oh, yeah, it's getting better. Yeah, it's getting better. But the problem is, look at this. Right? There's just not enough information there to really host that logo. Okay? So this is where subtools come into play again. So if you notice this guy, he's completely naked. Okay? But then he's got clothes, even though he's still naked. I don't know why I didn't put pants on him, but I didn't put pants on him. Okay? So these all have pieces. There's a shirt, there's a vest, there's a backpack, so forth and so on. So what I want to do is create Superman logo by itself. Okay? So how the heck am I going to do that? How the heck am I going to say, okay, this is great, I know I can mask, but how am I going to do that? Well, we can use the masking as some power here. Okay? I can, under subtools, okay, at the very bottom, there's a feature called extract. And when I click this, we extract from the mask. Right? So I'm literally making the Superman logo from the mask. So when I hit that extract button, boom, there you go. It makes the geometry. Okay? So I can control the thickness with this thickness slider. Okay? And say extract. And now it's fatter. Okay? I have a smoothness control here. So as I bump this up, see, it's not making it yet. Okay? Because I have to hit accept in order to make it. So then I can say, now if I hit accept, we have just made a Superman logo that quickly. There you go. Now we got a nice piece of mesh. Okay? And I can have some fun with this by telling Zbrush, let's actually just play with the middle portion. Okay, and I'm going to turn on display double so you guys can see this. Okay? And I'm going to edge loop it. Okay? So I just added, in essence, I just added an edge loop. I'm not telling you. Okay. What? How did I add that, or how did I hide? Yeah, well, the edge loop and the edging is because we're affecting the geometry. Geometry, edge loop, edge loop. Right? I can even do this. And then you guys can do this. And then, you have a different sound effect. So I'm shrinking and growing my selection. Because in the clay world, right? If I'm working on a character and I need to work on the obliques, like if I'm clay, which I really am inside, and that's my middle name. Not really. Okay, so if I'm going to work on the obliques, right, and this is clay, I can't get to them. So in the clay world, you have to what? You have to cut off the arm, put it on the table, and do this. Because you want to make sure it doesn't fall on the ground. And you think that's silly, but it happens every time. How many times does that happen to you, where something fell on the ground that you cut off in the wax clay world? Yeah. Right? You think it's funny? Yeah. Oh, and you roll over it. And then you do it again. You're like, wait, what was that? And you go, and you do this. And it's like Play-Doh. Right? So we make fun of that, but I can't tell how many times where like I'm in clay and I like put my something here and I go like this and I'm just doing this and it falls off and I'm like, no! And it always never fails. Falls flat on the face and it's now just a flat face. Okay? So we want to be able to have that same thing in the ZBrush world. but we're digital, so we don't have to worry about this falling off, breaking, smashing, right? So what I'm doing is I'm showing portions of my mesh. So we can show a portion of the mesh very quickly, right? I can even use a lasso capability, and it shows just based upon the lasso. So in essence, I'm just showing portions of my mesh, and I can flip between both very quickly if I want to. Okay, so what I'm doing is using this thing called polygrouping. That's what these beautiful rainbow colors are for, is I can pick and choose what polygroups I want to look at. And it becomes very powerful. Because I want to be able to get to that purple one, right? So I can, hey, there's that polygroup. I actually don't want to look at that anymore. Let's inverse it. And then let's hide that one as well. And then let's hide the pink as well. Okay? And then what I can do is I can even go here, edge loop. I'm going to put the crisp on and put a little displacement there. So when I edge loop it, pushes out. So what I'm doing is that. So I'm just creating that lip there, right? But what I prefer doing, which I'm a fan of, is masking everything off. Okay, so what I did is just mask that in there, inversing it, right? And then I can use something like deformation, and then I can go to inflate and watch it inflate. I can inflate inward, outward, right? Yeah. This is gonna cost you. All right, so all you have to do, this is gonna cost you $450.50. Okay, so when you're grouping, see there's different colors, okay? So for selecting, okay, you're holding down Control and Shift. That triggers selection, okay, in ZBrush. And all I have to do is just tap on the color, and then that's the color you get. Okay, and what we're doing is kind of like, think about two pieces of paper. The front of the Superman logo is in this hand, the rest of the Superman logo is in this hand. So if those were actually on a piece of paper and you wanted to switch them, and you needed this in the left hand, you would just do this, right? And then if I wanted to switch again, I would just do this. Everyone get that analogy? If not, I'm going to come up with a new one. Okay? So in essence, I'm looking at the front of the Superman logo, and the rest of the Superman logo is hidden. Okay? So if I want to do that little flipping thing, it's literally, think about it, I'm just flipping it, flipping, right? So I'm holding down Control Shift, and I'm just clicking, dragging, and it flips between the two visibles portions. Okay? And then because something's hidden, I can continue to hide stuff that way. Okay? So I can click on another polygroup, and it hides it over to the other side. I'm going to get that a little bit. We'll keep talking about it. So, but now you guys want to put this Superman logo, like, right, on your dude, okay? I'm just smoothing it up a little bit. So you want to put this logo on him, right? So how on earth are you going to do that? Well, this is its own tool, okay? And then he's here, where he's his own tool, where he's got a bunch of subtools. Okay, so what I want to do is append, or in this case, I like to insert the logo into his list of meshes. Okay? So it's sitting, see, right up here. I just cloned everything. It's sitting right here. Okay? I want to now take that tool and put it with this one, which has 11. See, there's a number 11. It means it has 11 subtools. Okay, and this one has 2 because it has the logo and the plane that I use. All right? So I want to now insert that Superman logo into him. So in the subtool, because we want to insert a new subtool, there's going to be an insert button. Pulls open, say, what do you want? Okay, I'm going to say logo. And then boom, you've got an instant Superman logo right at his crotch. So perfectly positioned and placed. Who wouldn't want? Superman underwear. Okay, so I need to move this around. Okay, so this is why at the top section here, we've been using Z-add to sculpt. Z-sub is holding the Alt key. There's a move, scale, and rotate here. This is to physically move the mesh around, right? So I can freely move this where I want. Okay? So what I'm doing is switching to move, and I'm just holding the Alt key, and I can freely move that wherever I want in the world. Okay? So then I'm putting that there, and then I kind of want to change the size of this. So I'm going to use this little thing. I'm not going to bother going through this. And I'm just going to change the scale of this really quickly to where I want. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to make the logo a little bit more wide. Okay? And it's sitting in the middle of his body, right? So I want to move it to the front of his body. And I'll turn perspective mode off so you guys can see what's happening here. Right? So now I have this thing. I want to be able to put this on the body, which we're getting there. It's looking good. We're starting to feel Superman, and if I render it, okay? But the problem is it doesn't really form to his body. It's not forming very well, okay? So all I have to do is tell it to form to the body, and it's forming to the body now. And then I can position it in space where I want it. And now it's sitting on his body. Right? So what I'm doing is I used a brush that we call Matchmaker, Matchmaker, make me a match. Laugh it up, but that's literally how the coder, like, he calls me, he goes, Matchmaker, match. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you singing to me right now? He goes, Matchmaker, Matchmaker. I'm like, he's like, just download it, you'll know. I'm like, what the heck is he talking about? So it makes me laugh every time. So all this is doing is matching the subtool that's selected, which in this case is the Superman logo, to any subtool that's on below it. Okay, so if I grab something like here, like this, okay, see how many subtools? There's 3. Okay, so there's the brick here with all the detail, no detail, no detail. If I grab this brick, just matching it, so now it's matching to the surface. Okay, and what this is doing is a lot like, I'm good, I'm drinking soda.
You don't drink soda?
No. I'm high on life. Okay, so in essence, what this is doing, the easiest way to explain this, think about these bricks, right? Think about them literally as desks here, right? So if I offset this a little bit, okay, like this, right? So this is the big brick, this is the little brick, and then I'm also now the little brick that I'm going to start pushing on. What this is doing is it's literally just doing this. And then when it hits this, it stops, and it keeps looking for more. But if there's something here, it can't look for more. So if I offset my body like this, and I start doing this, this lake will stop, but this will keep going. Right? So it's going to keep pushing until it finds another surface. So what's happening here is this little brick is sitting here in the world. Okay? This is the big brick, and then there's another brick right here. So this little brick gets pushed until it meets this one, and then it keeps pushing again until it meets this one. Okay? It will only go in this direction. It won't go in that direction or anything else like that. So the positioning of this to the camera, this is why we started with navigation, becomes really important. So remember I was talking about shift clicking? Well, if I need to know how to do that, if I need to say, well, I need to look dead on this brick, I need to know that tapping shift will put it dead looking at the camera. Okay? Because that's really important for this brush. So when I start drawing, I know it's only pushing straight dead on forward. Okay? And then the important part is, this is a brush. Okay? So where I'm clicking becomes very important. Okay? So you see where I'm clicking here? All right? Watch, will be differences. So I'm going to click here, and we're going to do this. And then I'm going to undo, and I'm going to click here. Looks the same, but it's not. See the difference? This one's hugged to the surface. This one is not. Okay? Because what you told it, this is, code works logically. So this is a logical thing. It's just saying, it's literally doing this. Okay, when do I run into something? Oh, stop. Okay, keep going, stop. Right? But you, the user, are telling it, hey, this cube's actually the furthest away from everything else. Okay? So what it does is when you click here, that's what it's analyzing first. It's analyzing this area first, and then it sees this and stops, and it knows it keeps going, and then it's got to keep pushing to get to this surface. If you start down here, it's analyzing the bigger brick in the back first, which is not actually the furthest sitting thing in space. This is before that. You guys understand that? So when you start pushing this, it finds the big brick first, right? And then it comes up and finds this little brick, but it's sitting further forward in space. So what it's got to do is push this forward to meet that brick. So that's really important. If I click here, because this is first and then that second, everything will hug. If I click here, it's going to pull it off the surface because this is going to be seen first, then that, but this is sitting further in the room than this. Does that make sense? So you can do, no, it doesn't make sense. Okay. So you can do things like even like this, right? And then just say, and there you go. Right? So that's all I'm doing is I'm starting to layer. ZBrush is like a cake or an onion. I'm just starting to layer things on top of it. Okay? So we give you brushes and things to do really quickly. There's going to be times where, what if I wanted to like put a zipper on here? I don't know why, but maybe I want to put a zipper on here. Okay? This is just matching. So you could try and make a zipper, but then combining things that we talked about, the curve mode and insert mesh brushes, I could also just draw the zipper and then tell it to get rid of the subdivision levels. We don't want those. And then there's a zipper. Right? I can change the size of the zipper, right, however I want. And so now this is a very small zipper. Right? I can do, here I'll make it bigger so you guys can see it. See it's hugging the surface. So we start combining all these and just making features that kind of does this, right? Let's say I want to do something like World War I German tank. Okay, let's say I want to make something like this tank or this one. So you see the tracks, right? I want to be able to make those tracks. I can make them really quick in ZBrush. I can use something else that we call shadow box, okay, which will literally allow me to just mask and instantly makes geometry. Okay, so as I mask in here, I can make some geometry, right? I can even turn on symmetry, right? I can do this, drawn, needs the legs, right? But I could also even do something like this and say, hey, I need a gear for something. There you go. And then I can say, hey, it needs to have a little bit of a hole. There you go. Very quickly, and then unmask, start unmasking. Oh, it's going to be a sharp gear. There you go. Right? So you can freely do whatever you want with this. So it's something like, everything in its mother's open right now. To give you an example, that's just cool too. Nope. Nope. Yep, there we go. See how fast this loads. Load it up. Some music, bring it up to live. Hey! How you doing? Enjoy the music. So you see the gears? Right? That's all it is. See that logo? Match me. That's it. That's it. That's all it is. This watch was done with 4 features. That's it. See all the numbers? That's physical geometry. And there's letters in the back, and you wait for it, wait for it, for it. Beautiful. That's right, performing arts too. Look at all the subtools. When this watch was done, I have this watch. It's 554 subtools when we originally made it. Okay? Look at all the pieces. Right? So he's thinking smart. He's thinking about, why do I just make another gear? Make another gear. Make another gear. Make another. ZBrush can handle it, so why not do it? Right? And then 100% ZBrush, including the video and the playing back of the music. Okay? So you have a lot of cool things you can do with this. So for another example, okay, if we go backwards, because now I'm just having fun with the music. No, not the gorilla. That's a gorilla. Is doing something like, which we are used by Harley Davidson and other motorcycle companies. So here is a motorcycle. Kenny G. Not really, but. So this again is, so you guys remember how I did my Superman logo? Almost every piece on this bike practically was done that way. Okay? So we literally just brought a plane in, put an image of a motorcycle, and just started masking off the strap, mask off the strap, mask off the strap. In fact, this bike was built in an hour in Zbrush, the entire thing. And we have part 1 and part 2, they're both 20 minutes long, of him building the bike from scratch, from beginning to end. Wait for it, wait for it. You gotta know, we're always gonna have enough of these parts. So that entire thing is Zbrush, right? To give you an idea. And then there's videos here of him going from beginning to end, right? So it'll expand here in a minute. You guys can also see the subtitles. So what I'm really trying to hit home with you guys is, it looks very complex, but if you break down each part and just subtool, 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 the complexity comes, right? From look at them all. Right? Instead of trying to sculpt a screw, you're just making the screw. And at this time, there's no insert mesh brushes. There's no that curve and get a zipper. That didn't exist in Zbrush at this time, or when we did the watch. Okay? So it gives you a good idea of really what you can do with this. So in essence, what I'm doing is making subtools by using this thing Shadowbox, right? So I want to make a subtool from this Shadowbox. So I kind of want to get this image of this tank, right? So you guys don't have dual monitors, or do you? You don't. Okay? But most likely at home you might have a dual monitor. So normally you would put this over to the side, right? You guys just look at it. Well, I could also do this in ZBrush. Alrighty then. I can make ZBrush itself completely transparent. I can move around, see the UI, come back, and I'm actually can do this and start lining up. And I'm making the mesh while I'm looking through to what's underneath ZBrush. Okay, and this is called see-through, which is a slider up here. So in essence, it's making ZBrush transparent. So it's a very quick way to, if you don't want to bring in an image for referencing, which you can bring images directly into ZBrush for referencing, but if you don't want to do that, I can do this, because I just want to be kind of quick. I just kind of want to get the general idea of the path maybe that I want to make on this. No, I don't like that. Maybe I want to go from here, across here, down, and then like this, and then it comes like this, and like this. Just general idea. Okay? So you can see that. Let's turn see-through off. And now I have this. And then I can refine this by taking away mask as much as I want. Okay? So I'm just getting that shape that I want, maybe, the tracks to follow. So very simple. Okay? And then I can add thickness to it. So I can say, hey, I want it to be that thick. And then there you go. I can even get crazy and put a hole in it. And then now it's got a hole through it. Put a hole through it this way too. And now it's got a hole through it. Okay, so very, very simple. I'll show you some other thing you can do with this. But what I want to do now is I need that mesh. So I'm going to come out of this mode that we call Shadowbox. So there's the mesh, right? It's good to go, right? It's symmetrical as well, right? Now I need a tank track. So luckily, it ships with ZBrush. There's actually two different ones. Here's a tank track, right? So I can start drawing out now just the tank track right on the surface, okay? But I actually want to be quicker about this, and then boom, done, right? So I'm using again a subtool to get to my end result, right? So now I can get rid of this block because I don't need it anymore, right? And so now all I have is this, okay? And then I can make the other side if I want to. So what I'm going to do is delete what's hidden, okay? I'm going to move this over here, okay? And now I need the other one, so I'm just going to, just like in Maya, mirror weld it over. There you go. So now I got my tank tracks. It's that simple. So, but you got to be thinking the way kind of, I'm thinking outside the box. I'm thinking, how about I just make the shape that's kind of like those tank tracks and then use the tank brush to just wrap around it. So what I was doing was when I was drawing out this curve, here we'll grab a sphere. When I was drawing this curve out, right, I was holding the shift key and see it wraps around the surface. And then we just continue and finish it off. Is all we're doing. Okay? So I can start thinking about, even there's some bolts here, right? Or some nuts, right? So I can draw these out. Okay? Or I can put them along a curve, right? And I can draw them out, and then now it wraps around. Okay? I can change the gap of those, so I can make them have a bigger stepping, so when I wrap it around, so they alter more, they're not so repetitive. Okay? I can even start using the geometry, and another thing we have, which is a slice brush. And slice, sometimes I don't like that one. Let's go rounded, to harsh, to harsh. Okay, so this is creating a new polygroup. You guys see that? So now I want the bolts to go along that. This is what I want them to go along. Okay? Now I'm going to say, let's change my stepping to 2. And I'm going to say frame the mesh. So you see you get a curve right there. Tap, bolts. Right? So literally think about ZBrush as kind of like an onion or a cake. I'm using one feature, and then I'm just throwing it on top of another feature. Right? You don't have to do this, but then this is where the power really comes in. Because I have a software that allows me to do that. Because if I'm in the real world, I might use something weird to start painting with or sculpting with, stuff like that. So we're thinking also that in that term as well. Because again, remember, what are we about at ZBrush? We're about art, right? So we're thinking artistically also about the tools and the way that we can overlap them and use them, right? I could, even if I wanted to, here's 3 things you could also do with insert mesh brushing. So you see this bolt that's drawing out? If I want it to be the same size, like say this size and my brush size, hold the control key and they'll all be the same size no matter what I do. Even how far away I pull, same size. How close I go, same size. This comes in handy because I'll make a brush and start throwing on my mech stuff. Yes?
So let's say if I'm working on a model, like, and then like later on I want to make the same bolts. How do I do that?
Well, if you're gonna
Like the same size bolts.
yeah, well that if it's the same size bolts, you'd have to write down the draw size. You'd have to write down a piece of paper. It doesn't know that when you drew this out, it was at that draw size. You would have to write it down. So like if I'm in that situation, that's pretty much what I'll do with the model I'm working on. Maybe I'm like, just so I have it, okay, this bolt was at brush size 50. And then I wait, oh man, now I want to go put some of these bolts somewhere else now. I can just go to that reference. Unfortunately, right now, there's no way to store that. Okay? But you guys can also, if you notice the height of the bolt, I can play with that by dropping the Z intensity. Now the bolt's not as high. So I can use one mesh, and now I've changed it into a totally different mesh. So I'm just using the Z intensity to change the height of everything. Okay? Then I can also, in the brush, change the depth. Right? So you see how it's sitting on top of the surface? Okay, I don't want it to sit on top of the surface. So I can change the depth right here, this embedding, drop that down, and see it going more into the surface. Okay, so if you think about, I also drop the intensity, I'm getting a more shallow bolt or screw head, right? And the last thing that you also can do, let me put everything back to, okay, this. See how it's not kind of wrapping the surface? I want it to wrap to the surface. So you guys know about this, right? You can do this and do brush matchmaker, right? And try doing this, okay? But it's very low. So what we did is, forget all that mess. How about in the brush system itself, under the modifiers, we just give you something that does that. So let me grab this again. So right here, there's a projection strength. Okay? So when I start drawing this out, right, it's wrapping to the sphere. Then, of course, then I can change my intensity, make it more shallow. Right? So then I can save this brush out. So I can go to brush and hit save as, and I can save that out and call that brush as many times that I want.